shall we? A wee bookish blether to ring in the year. Because it is time for the video in which I traditionally tell you all of my very stressful plans for the next 12 years that I try to convince myself are great fun, but not this year. It's Leanne and welcome to whatever I have decided to call this video. I mean, you know the title because you already clicked on it, but at the time of filming I actually have no idea what I'm going to call this. In previous years I've called it Bookish Plans, Bookish Goals, Bookish Resolutions, and to be honest none of those titles have stuck because none of them were exactly what I was telling you guys. Because really what I was telling you guys was more my expectations of myself, which were usually, on the whole, wildly unrealistic. Because I think that's what resolutions, bookish or otherwise, are always designed to be. They're meant to be things that we aspire to and push ourselves to for the rest of the year, and thus end up making ourselves freaking miserable. So this year it's less like resolutions or goals or plans, and it's more like my manifesto. My bookish manifesto for 2022, which more or less goes like this. Let's be nicer to ourselves and read our freaking books. And apparently let's also watch back all of our old videos in preparation for filming this one and make ourselves very depressed. Don't worry, I have chocolate for afterwards. It's fine. Fine. But before we go any further to what books I'm planning on reading next year, how about we talk about some books that have already landed in my lap? Because I would like to thank today's sponsors, Book of the Month. Honestly, you guys in the US are completely spoiled because working with Book of the Month for the last couple of months and getting this beautiful blue box on my doorstep just absolutely makes my day. If you have never heard of Book of the Month before, they are a book subscription service wherein you can sign up to receive one book every month or more if you would like. These books are a mixture of special and new releases, often titles which aren't actually out to buy for the general public yet. Titles which Book of the Month have given their seal of approval and have produced in absolutely stunning hardback form just for you. So let's see what I picked this month, shall we? This month I have chosen Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins, which is a thriller. Nobody's surprised. Why is nobody surprised? I'm so unpredictable. Reckless Girls is kind of a modern shipwreck thriller. It is set on a beautiful remote island called Moreau Island, a place which has a curious history of shipwrecks, cannibalism and even murder. But as we know, sometimes our noses get the better of us, and curious histories like that often draw more tourism than it keeps away. So when 6 stunning 20-somethings, please God let them be seemingly vapid rich kids, embark on a holiday on Moreau Island, they are looking for sun-drenched days and, you know, alcohol and escape. Except escape is the last thing that they're getting because they find themselves completely cut off from civilization. No way to contact the mainland, no way to leave. And then a body turns up. And suddenly there were 5. The tagline says, with its island gothic sensibility, sexy suspense, and spine-tingling reimagining of an Agatha Christie classic, Reckless Girls will wreck you. Does this not scream? Leanne, I think it does. Book of the Month has a January offer, so for just $9.99 you can have one of these gorgeously curated hardbacks appear on your doorstep too. Obviously I chose the thriller mystery because of course I did, but let's have a look at what other titles you could have land on your doorstep this month. We have Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson, The Magnolia Palace by Fiona Davis, Fiona and Jane by Jean Chen Ho, Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly, and finally every month Book of the Month offers some add-on titles that you can pick to add to your subscription which are completely optional. And the one that I picked this month is one that I am so excited for. It is The Maid, and this is about Molly, who is a neurodivergent young woman who existed in the world solely with the help of her grandmother, who was her carer. Her grandmother helped to make her life less chaotic by giving her simple rules for how she should live. But now that her grandmother has died, Molly has nothing but her cleaning job at a hotel to throw herself into. Everything is going fairly well until one morning she opens a suite to clean it and she finds a dead body. So if you guys are in the US and you would like to enjoy Book of the Month, then head down to my description where there is a link and a code to get your first month for only $9.99. So as I kind of alluded to earlier on in the video, I did go back and watch maybe my last 4 or 5 years worth of plans, goals, resolutions, whatever you want to call them. And the one resounding takeaway that I had from all of these videos was that I looked so stressed. And I know that I wasn't miserable because I was looking ahead to another amazing year on BookTube with you guys. I was miserable because every time I started one of these videos, I started on the principle that I was already doing things wrong, or there were things that I should have been doing that I wasn't. And so instead of these videos being all about the stuff that I was looking forward to in the next year, they were all about the stuff that I was going to fix. How many videos I was going to make, what schedule I was posting the videos on, how many series I absolutely had to finish, how many books that I'd been telling myself for years I was going to allow myself to reread, and this year was going to be the year. And I just kind of want to go back and give myself a hug, because here's a spoiler: none of the years were the year. And I honestly don't know why we do this to ourselves. So instead of this video giving you a list of all of the things that I absolutely must accomplish in 2022, I am instead going to tell you about all of the things that I'm looking forward to trying in 2022. All of the ideas that I have that I'm excited about for 2022. And all of the things that I'm getting rid of in 2022. Like, hi, hello, yes, my name is Leanne, and I have always considered myself a failure and an imposter and not a real person. 2022 might be the year that we change that. Maybe. We're going in cautiously. So let's start off with some traditional content, which I still quite enjoy, and that's how many books I am planning on reading in 2022. I've mentioned in every previous version of this video that since I've been tracking my reading for the last 10 years or so, I have always read a little bit more than the previous year, and so I continue to put that number up in order to challenge myself. But in 2020, that of course all changed. We entered a global pepperoni, and I think BookTube for the most part went in one of two directions. Either it was you read everything all the time, more books than you've ever read in your entire life to avoid the news, or you binge watched TV shows and just went into kind of panic mode. And unfortunately I was in the latter camp, and so in 2022 I read less than I had any year since I started tracking my reading. And I was really depressed about it. And despite making a video wherein I sat down and went, do you know what, we shouldn't be ashamed of how much we read going through this crisis, or you know, just in general, because reading should be a fun hobby. I think it turned into one of those situations where at the time where I made that video I maybe felt like that, and I was giving really good advice from that really comfortable place, but then as time wore on I started to feel worse and worse about it. And so going into 2021 I was like, I will read more this year than I did even before 2020. I will pretend 2020 didn't exist. And then unfortunately midway through the year I had a mental breakdown, and during that time I stopped reading again, because reading for me is an escape, and it's something that I do when I'm happy and when I'm sad. I don't want to pick up books. I don't want to have to actively engage my brain in any way. I talk more about mental health and depression and working towards an adult ADHD diagnosis in this video if you're interested in finding out more about that. For this video we're just going to be talking about the books and my attitude readjustment, because I realise now that that feeling that I had last year where I was like, I was failing at reading, I was failing at BookTube, I wasn't doing as well as I wanted in any area of my life, was not my fault, and that person was not only struggling so hard, but we were all struggling so hard. And while I seem to cut everybody else in the world slack, I don't often seem to cut myself any slack. The reading challenge every year should be fun. It always has been in previous years for me. I know over the past couple of years a lot of people have set their reading challenge at just one book so that there's no pressure for the rest of the year, but that little tiny bit of pressure, it was exciting to me. It was a game. But then the last couple of years the game just turned into another way to punish myself. And so you would think with that knowledge in hand that I would be going into 2022 being like, I'm not doing a reading goal, or my reading goal is 5, But no. When I wrote my notes for this video, I wrote down 52 books. We are going in with a cautious, gentle yet optimistic goal. And as soon as the Goodreads and Storygraph challenges were available for this year, I set my goal to 82 books. So either she is very optimistic or she is just not learning. But 82 books would be the equivalent of my 2017 or 2018 reading goal. So it's not more books, it's just the same amount that I have read in previous years. But I am saying out loud that if I don't make that goal this year, I'm not going to kick myself about it. I feel like I need to have that tattooed on a bit of my body that I see regularly, like maybe the back of my hand, and then I can be like, The one other thing that all of my previous versions of this video have included is trying to get to more rereads, is allowing myself to put more rereads in amongst my new releases and the things that I am super anticipating, and going back to old favourites, because I used to, in my early 20s, reread a lot. In fact, I would say that every third book that I read was actually a reread of something that I had previously loved. And I see a lot of complaints about this every year on BookTube, where people are like, oh, BookTubers just prioritise new releases, nobody reads backlist things, nobody rereads, and that's not true. Lots of people make rereading a priority on BookTube. Lots of people make authors' backlists a priority on BookTube. So the fact that I wasn't prioritising rereading wasn't like a BookTube culture problem. It was simply because I was so desperate to get to all of the new releases, and in my case, before the hype train hits them, and then I get scared of them, and then they go on my forever shelf and I never read them again. I have whole videos dedicated to hyped books that live on my bookshelf that I'm terrified to pick up. Although last year I actually managed to pick up a few of those, so there'll be an update soon. And weirdly, I don't know what broke that spell for me, but in 2021 I reread a lot. Like, I reread whole series, in fact, and I want to keep up that energy in 2022. There are a bunch of really specific series that I want to reread. A lot of them are fantasy. One of them is The Belgariad by David Eddings. I talk about this series a lot in terms of wanting to reread it. I also want to reread some classic urban fantasy this year, like the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series. I'd like to reread some favourite childhood series. I'd like to reread Lockwood & Co. Shocker, I know. And I would like to reread some of the early memoirs that I picked up now, with years of having read like complicated emotional memoirs under my belt, to go back and see if I get more from them now. Weirdly, one of the things that I haven't prioritised that I would really quite like to this year is rereading more classics. More books that I studied for my English literature degree specifically that I would like to read in like a non-university setting. I would really like this year to collect some beautiful editions of my favourite classics and to read the editions as I get them, instead of just putting them in pretty places on my shelves. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and more on book buying later on in this video. So I am going to say that rereading is a priority for me in 2022, because I have been so enjoying allowing myself to indulge in it. And again, it is that neurodivergent thing of us watching our favourite TV shows or rereading our favourite books over and over again because we know how they end, and that's comforting. And comfort is definitely also a vibe that we're going to go for in 2022. A thing that has briefly featured in a couple of these videos before is some version of a book buying ban, or chatting about the amount of books that I want to buy. And I confess to you guys that I'm kind of over it. Late on in 2021, when I thought that this video was still going to be like a normal goals video, I asked you guys on Instagram what you thought about book buying bans. And out of the hundreds of responses that I got, only one person was actually really in favour of them, or said that they had ever actually worked for them. A lot of people said that they were fun, they liked a game version of it where you were able to earn books to buy, or they liked versions of people's videos like Emma from Drinking by My Shelves, who tries to balance her books every year and make sure that as much goes off her TBR as comes on it. But literally nobody was actually a fan of traditional book buying bans, where it's just like, for 6 months I'm not going to buy any books, which was what I did at the start of 2021. In 2020 I had not bought any books for the start of the year, primarily because of the pepperoni, and because we're both self-employed, and so Harry and I didn't really know how that was gonna play out if we had to lock down and stop working, and it was a pragmatic saving money thing. In 2021 I recreated it because I'd actually found it really quite easy to do in 2020. In 2021 however, it was definitely more of a struggle, and by the end of it I'd allowed myself some exceptions, and I had gone out book buying with some friends because it was the first time I was allowed out of the house, and I think that was when it started to tickle the back of my consciousness. But it wasn't until I did the Instagram poll and listened to what you guys thought about book buying bans that it kind of solidified my opinion, which is I hate them. I hate them, and I don't ever want to do one again. This year I'm just gonna buy books when it suits me. I'm gonna buy books when I feel like buying books, and so you are gonna see some book hauls from me, but you're probably gonna see less book hauls than you did in any of the previous years. I don't know if this is a me thing or something that you guys can relate to as well, but I tend to go through phases with my book buying where I'll be like, oh, I want lots of new shinies right now, and I get really excited about having them on my shelves, and then I slow down for great big periods where I'm kind of reading those books and also reading backlist titles from my shelves, and I don't want any new books to come in because I don't want to feel overwhelmed. Which brings me to my next point. In 2022, I plan on continuing to unhaul the hell out of my shelves. I've shared this a few times before, but I come from a family with a history of hoarding. So my mum does a lot of impulsive buying and stockpiling and keeping things for best, keeping things in their wrappers, not wanting to use things. If you bought it, you kept it in perfect condition, you put it somewhere, not always on display, but somewhere safe, and you kept that thing for the rest of your life. That impulse to keep things for best and for your possessions to always be your possessions was something that had been passed down from my grandma, who is a traditional hoarder. The piles and piles of stuff up to the ceiling and the things in the kitchen which you haven't seen for many years, and that's just how my grandmother has always lived. And so through the generations of that trauma, it eventually landed in my iteration, which was to collect things. And so for me, books turned into an extension of that. So for many years, whatever books that I bought, even if I was no longer interested in them, they had to stay on my shelves. They had to be displayed. They had to be somehow worked into my collection. And so when I started unhauling and unhauling publicly, it was like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders. My philosophy became essentially, this is an object which once brought you joy, you brought it into your house, you loved it, it made you happy to have it in your house, but now it's no longer bringing you joy, so now it's fine to pass it on to somebody else. I call it my slightly twisted version of Marie Kondo. And so over the last couple of years, my collection has gone from like over 1,000 books, a lot of which were read, but many of which were kept for the wrong reasons, to a much more manageable size of collection. And weirdly, it's making me feel great. And I don't know, it's an odd concept for me, but I'm here and I'm thriving in it, so that's what we're going with. And so the good thing is, you'll get more salty unhaul videos, which you guys really like, but also in 2022, you will finally actually get a bookshelf tour, because I will finally feel like my collection is in a place where I want to do that. I started some bookshelf tours quite a few years ago, but the actual sheer amount of books that I had in the house just made it really daunting, and at the time the really big trend on BookTube was just to show every book that you had in your collection, and I don't want to do that. I want to show you guys an overview of my collection, pick out things that were particular favourites that I really loved. I want to talk about all of the little objects on the shelf and the art that I keep behind me. I want to talk about my plants and my crystals and my reading plans. So that's the kind of bookshelf tour that you will be signing up for if you decide to watch that video. So yeah, that's kind of it for me. This has been a very different, very chatty version of this video that I have never ever done before. I usually come here with like bullet pointed lists. I don't really talk through a lot of the things that I've chosen. I just tell you what I'm going to do, and then I try and force myself to do them. But I wanted to come and have a more chatty discussion with you guys. A realer discussion, a more chilled discussion about how I'm feeling about reading plans. I want, in short, 2023's Leanne to like 2022's Leanne better. So with that, I hope that everything that you have planned for yourself and for your books in 2022 comes true. Don't forget Book of the Month. If you would like to sign up, the code for January is down in my description box with a link. And I will speak to all of you guys really soon. Bye! I don't know guys, if we got this far between my rambling, the neighbours DIY and the Scottish lighting, then I'm considering this to be a win already.